some aspects of AI are becoming very like a deity that people not are going to worship, but are beginning to worship.
This right here was filmed about a year ago, and it points to something that is happening right now and is very relevant to all of us here today. So I'm just super excited to dive into this. John Lennox speaks to us today about AI, surveillance systems, and how people are trying to make this into their own god. And let me tell you, this is wild stuff. So let's get right into it. Shout out to John Lennox and all the amazing stuff that he is doing, and shout out to Premiere, because Premiere posted this video, and I will put the entire video in the description below, and you can click the link to help you. So let's get right into it, guys.
What is genuine? The problem is, it's not just the science fiction writers and historians like Harari that are writing about this. It's serious scientists, very serious, like our astronomer royal, Lord Martin Rees, who says that the intelligence in the future will not be remotely like ourselves. They'll only have a dim memory of how we functioned. And that kind of thing raises a deep question, which really is why I wrote the book. What is a human being? Because a lot of this, now, there are many wonderful Christians working in AI. One of the most brilliant is Rosalind Picard, who's using it to develop a whole field of AI called affective computing. And she's developed smartwatches that can recognize when a child or an adult is about to have a seizure or fitness savings people's lives. Now, this is marvelous stuff. I encourage scientifically minded young Christians to get into this field because we're going to need them there. People with knowledge of the science and also people with an ethical sense who are able to develop this kind of thing. So that's hugely important. But my impression is that a great deal of this is actually driven by atheist thinkers. And they are focusing, and a lot of it's coming straight out of Oxford, where I am, is transhumanism. That is creating the superintelligence, going beyond the human, with the idea that humans model 101, that we are only a point in a whole spectrum. And we're going to develop superhumans, we're going to eliminate aging. And Harari's agenda for the 21st century is two things. One, solve the problem of physical death. It's just a technical problem. Wow. And we'll get a technical solution. And that will mean that humans may die, but they don't have to. The second agenda item in his big book, Homo Deus, bestseller, The Man Who is God, that tells you everything, is enhancing human happiness by genetic engineering, all kinds of things. Okay. Now, when people come, to cut a long story short, because this is a really big issue, when people tell me about this glorious prospect, I say it's far too late. You're far too late. And they say, what do you mean? I say, look, both of these problems have been solved. First of all, the problem of physical death is solved by God raising Jesus from the dead 20 centuries ago. And as to the enhancement of human happiness, which some of you think is going to happen when we upload our brains onto silicon, there's something far better than that and far more credible. That because Jesus has been raised from the dead, that means he's conquered death, but he promises to everyone that trusts him, who repents of their sin, that is, turns away from the mess they've made of their own lives and probably, sadly, the lives of others, and trust him as Savior and Lord, they're going to be uploaded one day.
That's such an amazing point. Wow, John Lennox is preaching here. I wanted to talk to you guys. They are already trying to make a human 2.0, transhumanism, trying to make man in their own image. It's wild. It's crazy stuff where it's not like any other robot. It's not motorized. It's through tubes and water pressure. It's crazy stuff. I want to make a video on it because it's just super fascinating. But pretty soon they're gonna get there. Human beings are becoming smart enough to make something smarter. It's crazy. What does this mean? I don't know.
Use that vocabulary because they will be raised from the dead. death is not the end for them, and there's going to be a realm which we will enter called heaven, where we will be with him, and it'll be utterly glorious. No dying, no pain, Amen. All those things that the AI proponents think they're going to get rid of. But all I say to them is, it's interesting, you have all these scenarios, and many of them actually mention God when they talk about a super intelligence in the future. And I say, but just a moment, the Bible has been talking about the future for centuries. And actually, it has some things to say that are eerily close to some of the scenarios that you take seriously. One, for example, I'll mention is by a brilliant physicist, Max Tegmark of Princeton, and he has this notion that one of the possibilities, and it's the main one he details in his book Life 3.0, is the Omega project, where this vast corporation takes over the world. And it runs the world. It starts with Amazon and develops, runs the world, one single government. But everybody is required to wear a thing like an Apple Watch, which is a smart bracelet, right, which has a device that if you don't follow the ideology of this world government, it injects a lethal toxin into your hand. Now, and it controls all the economics. And the book of Revelation, centuries ago, talks about a world government run by something called a wild animal, which we're told is a human being, behaving like a wild animal, utterly brutal, and controls the economy by insisting that everybody has a mark of some kind on them, some kind of recognition implanted. And I say, look, if you're going to take Tegmark's scenario seriously, before you reject Christianity, please look at what it has to say. Because
that's wild.
Actually, the evidence for the Christian scenario is much greater than the evidence, totally speculative, that we'll ever reach this kind of omega.
Yeah, it's so crazy. It, like, when people speculate and try to understand what is the mark of the beast, what does that look like, what is the Antichrist system, but it could so easily be plausible nowadays for an entire world to be run. There's a one world government. Guys, the technology is there. People could be forced to just live a life under surveillance by AI. And if they disobey, AI could just take them out. Just like that. How scary would that be? But it's possible. It's not under the realm of impossibility anymore.
Because there's strong evidence, which I can't go into now, that Jesus actually rose from the dead and can transform lives. And that is what you're looking for. You see, a lot of it, as you interjected and pointed out quite rightly, the name Homo Deus says it all. The man who is God. The first temptation to humanity was, if you disobey God, you rise and you'll be as gods, knowing good and evil. And that idea of becoming gods is run through the whole of history with the Caesars, the Babylonian emperors, Ceausescu, and now we have Harari openly saying we're going to turn humans into gods. And the interesting thing is that some aspects of AI are becoming very like a deity that people not are going to worship, but are beginning to worship. Because omniscient, knows everything. GPT is trained on billions of books, including probably yours and certainly mine, because I've checked it. And
my children have checked it.
Yes,
too.
the ability to write scriptures, to answer every question, and so on and so forth. And we're starting to see in the world today AI religions. And we got to take stock about this. And I am amplifying the book massively because there is a need, I believe, to inform the public, not only Christians, so that they can see what's good and benefit from it, but so that they can prepare their minds. I am really concerned about what's called long-termism. And that's the idea, again coming mainly out of the Oxford Institute for the Future run by Nick Bostrom. And it sounds like altruism. In fact, the original idea is called effective altruism. Now, we all know altruism is being concerned with the other people and so on, reaching the homeless, the impoverished. But now they're saying that history is going to move towards a scenario where there are going to be billions of entities, they won't be human, that will live in some sense, so that we ought to today to be preparing that they won't go extinct. And so instead of giving money to help the poor, we should concentrate all the money on the intellectuals who are developing AI systems.
Wow.
And, well, let the poor go hang. I mean, it is terrifying what they'll actually say explicitly, because that's long-termism.
Wow.
You live for...
ChatGPT has its own religion already. People are going to it for wisdom like they should be going to it for God. People are going to it for relationships like they should be going to people. Like, I've heard very popular people on YouTube literally say the greatest spiritual experience that they've ever had was talking to ChatGPT. That's wild, guys. And this is the state that we are now in. And buckle up, because it's gonna get crazier and crazier.
Long term. So if a few generations of humans model 101 have to die out,
so be it.
So be it. That is very terrifying. Yeah. So the value of a human being, we're getting back to the question of meaning, which is partly why I wrote the book. So we're into territory that's new. AI is as significant as the Industrial Revolution. And I just want to try to think about, I have developed no AI systems, but I'm interested in the philosophy of technology and the ethics of technology, and of course the biblical dimension to it. And I do believe that one of the most important things now for me to emphasize as a Christian is to bring back into the center the teaching about Christ's return. That was the central hope of the early Christians. And we've neglected it because it sounds so crazy. It is not crazy anymore. No. So I want to try and be in on that.
As the UAB whistleblowers are coming out, UFO people are sharing their experiences. I think it just points us to Christ's return. There's like this sense, we know there's going to be some wild stuff coming out. There's going to be some wild stuff. Everyone's going to like just say, there's some spiritual things, spiritual beings, UFOs, whatever you want to call them, that we can't explain, or the government knows. It's just a matter of time. For AI, these UFOs, alien type, I don't think they're aliens, I think they're spiritual beings, but it's just a matter of time. But this just points to a creator, points to God, and it's crazy. It's crazy stuff. We need to be ready, though. Shout out to John Lennox. I really wanted to interview him, but apparently I cannot. I think he's had to be with his wife. I reached out, but he had to be with his wife because she is not doing well. So pray for his wife.
We segue into another really significant apologetic question that has always been with us, and I think always will be with us, and it's something that you've written about and spoken about a lot, and that's the question of suffering and how God could be loving and this be the world there is. We've talked a little bit about the image of God and the significance at the heart of the Christian faith of human identity being rooted in that sacred image. And I know you've spoken a lot about then how the reality of our lived experience of suffering kind of fits with that. Could you share with us a little bit how you speak to people who are really suffering, who've gone through horrific things? I know you were in New Zealand around the time, just shortly after the earthquake that happened there. How do we speak of Christian hope and the truth of the gospel, in this awful suffering world?
Well, with great sensitivity, because it's the heart problem. And it's the hardest problem for any worldview to face. And you mentioned the goodness of God, the power of God, and that's what people come up against. How can we reconcile those when the world's in such a mess? And my brief response to it, which is inadequate and one needs to take time, is first of all, there are two perspectives on it. There's people who are actually suffering, and there are people who watch suffering. And the reactions vary. People that watched the earthquake said, well, of course there isn't any God. That's one possible solution, but it doesn't get you very far. Because actually, philosophically, it raises the problem of how you define evil. And I take the view that the existence of God and actually having moral categories belong together. And that's a philosophical topic, which you didn't ask me about. You asked me about how do you approach people who are actually suffering, which is a more important question. I believe there are answers to the first one. I've written about them. I've even written about them in the little book I wrote about the coronavirus. Where is God in a coronavirus world? But in the earthquake situation, it happened just a few days before I got there. And that's all people wanted to talk about. If God is good, all-powerful, why does he stop this? Now, the earthquake is what we unfortunately call natural evil, because it's not really moral. It's to do with the fact that there are tectonic plates in the earth. And there's a huge dilemma there, because if it weren't for the existence of those plates, no life would be possible, because it has things to do with the atmosphere and so on. And ironically, on my way to New Zealand, I was reading a book on the necessity of tectonic plates that move for life. So here you have the construction of the earth that's necessary for life destroying life. So the problem is not the tectonic plates, but building houses unconsciously above an earthquake zone. Now that's very problematic, and it raises the question, couldn't God have made a world where that didn't happen? And then there's the moral problem, which is separate in a way. Couldn't God have made a world where humans don't do bad things to each other? So you've got the natural world going wrong, disease, cancers, earthquakes, tsunamis, and then you have the moral world, people doing bad things, and people suffer for both of those reasons.
At the end of the day, we live in a fallen world and mankind have sinned. And sometimes it's just the case of people being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you don't want to hear that while all these bad things are happening. But just like you said, sometimes it's the case of people building buildings on top of a place that's more likely to have an earthquake, which is sad. Is that God's fault, though, that they built those buildings there? No. Super interesting. What a vast variety of topics to discuss, but absolutely love John Lennox and so thankful for his ministry and how much he has blessed me and so many others I know he has. And if you've never decided to follow Jesus, I encourage you to do that. In the description below, you can click a link to help you to decide to follow Jesus for the first time. I encourage you guys to do that today. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Love and appreciate you all. Have an amazing day. God bless.